One's own country must come first.
How true.
And although, strictly, this isn't a government matter, Minister, I personally would be deeply sorry to lose you.
Really, Humphrey? Is that true?
Yes, no, I mean that, Minister, most sincerely.
That's awfully nice, Humphrey. Yes, I suppose we have got rather fond of one another, in a way.
In a way, yes.
We're like a terrorist and his hostage.
Which one of you is the terrorist?
Well, there were three people in this relationship, and the third person, Bernard, is my next reason. He was played by Derek Fowlds, and he had the most difficult acting job of the lot, because Bernard had to spend long patches of time saying nothing and yet looking interested in everyone else's utter guff. And yet when Bernard opened his mouth to speak, his one line frequently had to be the funniest of the lot.
The only way to understand the press is to remember that they pander to their readers' prejudices.
Don't tell me about the press. I know exactly who reads the papers. The Daily Mirror is read by people who think they run the country. The Guardian is read by people who think they ought to run the country. The Times is read by the people who actually do run the country. The Daily Mail is read by the wives of the people who run the country. The Financial Times is read by people who own the country. The Morning Star is read by people who think the country ought to be run by another country. The Daily Telegraph is read by people who think it is.
Prime Minister, what about the people who read The Sun?
The Sun readers don't care who runs the country, as long as she's got big tits.
Bernard's pretty essential to the structure of the comedy. Both Hacker and Sir Humphrey confide in him, which means we get to find out what they're plotting next.
Useful chat, Bernard. Good job it never took place.
He was extremely clever, very well educated, very bright, and played both sides. He would say that he was both sides of centre, with slight leanings to the left and right.
Bernard's particular sort of pedantry was something that he brought out really well, I thought.
Grasp the nettle, take the bull by the horns.
Prime Minister, you can't take the bull by the horns if you're grasping the nettle.
Oh, really, Bernard?
All I meant was, if you grasp the nettle with one hand, you could take the bull by one horn with the other hand, but not both horns because your hand isn't big enough. And if you did take the bull by one horn, it would be rather dangerous because...
He was the release in the middle of it. You know, that he would puncture it every so often, and we were all glad that that happened.
So difficult for me, you see, as I'm wearing two hats.
Yes, isn't that rather awkward for you?
Not if one is in two minds.
Or has two faces.
I thought, what am I going to do with this part? So I had tiny glasses, and I talked terribly like that. I thought, you know, he's a civil servant and a PPS, he might talk like that. I'd worked on this character. So I got into the taxi with Mr. Hacker outside number 10, and Paul said to me, he said, "Why are you wearing those glasses?" I said, I thought they're rather good for the character. He said, "Oh, terrible, take them off." And he said, why are you talking in that funny voice? I said, "Ed, I thought it was rather good." He said, it's awful. He said, "Just be you."
Sorry to appear stupid, but...
Oh, perish the thought, Bernard.
Nigel and Derek and Paul were wonderful together. They were naughty together. A lot of giggling used to go on.
He's coming round now.
Why, did he faint?
No, he's just, you know...
It's a serious Bernard.
Yes, I know.
You can see Derek in many a recording, his sort of slightly wicked grin creeping across his face totally involuntarily. And Nigel and he adored each other, we always did. And so did Derek and Paul, of course, they got along terribly well.
Paul and Nigel were so generous to me. I know that after the first or second series, they both went to the writers and said, "I think you should write more for Derek. I think we should be more of a trio." And they were just wonderful.
Inquiries never find the true source of a leak.
But we know the true source, Prime Minister. You asked us to...
Bernard? You're not suggesting that I authorised this leak, I hope.
No, that is, yes, I mean, but... Oh, I remember now, sorry.
What do you remember, Bernard?
Whatever you want, Prime Minister.
Yes, Minister was more than a sitcom. It was actually the first and best guidebook we had to how the country was run. Viewers to the programme were the first to discover two pretty shocking things. One, the country wasn't being run by our elected politicians, but by Sir Humphrey and his colleagues from a gentleman's club. And two, run is the wrong word because that implies activity. The country was in fact being expertly kept at a standstill.
Taxation isn't about what you need.
Well, what is it about?
Prime Minister, the Treasury doesn't work out what they need to spend and then think how to raise the money.
What does it do?
They pitch for as much as they think they can get away with and then think what to spend it on.
It did make people more politically aware. They looked at things and thought, that's almost could be true.
May I suggest that instead of trying to butter up the press, we distract them. Let's give them a story.
Such as?
Start a war, that sort of thing.
Start a war?
It had huge following in the sense it was quite didactic. It was by far the best way to learn about the internal workings of politics. It was better than any series of documentaries.
To Labour we explain that selective education is divisive, and to the Tories we explain that it is expensive. That way we have a happy relationship with the NUT and we educate our own children privately.
It's about who governs Britain, and what we did was reveal to the public, it was already widely known in government circles, we revealed to the public that it's largely the civil service that runs the country.
Now, if that were to leak, shocking though a leak would be...
Oh, shocking, shocking.
It'd be profoundly embarrassing for the Prime Minister. I can't think why I didn't think of it before.
Nor can I.
I mean, we all love other comedy series which have been warm-hearted and sweet and funny and about family setups and stuff, and very wonderful they are too. But this went for the jugular.
Europe is a community of nations dedicated towards one goal. Oh. So may we share the joke, Humphrey?
Oh, Minister. Now, let's look at this objectively. It is a game played for national interests and always was. Why do you suppose we went into it?
To strengthen the brotherhood of free Western nations.
Oh, really? We went in to screw the French by splitting them off from the Germans.
Well, why did the French go into it, then?
Well, to protect their inefficient farmers from commercial competition.
It certainly doesn't apply to the Germans.
No, they went in to cleanse themselves of genocide and apply for readmission to the human race.
I really think that Yes Minister is up there with George Orwell's 1984 in how powerfully it's influenced our view of the state, except that there aren't as many laughs in Orwell. The programme provided us with a pretty accurate warning of the horrors of spin, and it taught us how to unpick the verbal tricks that politicians think they can get away with in front of the cameras. And that means that today, if an MP starts to sound like they're a character from Yes Minister, they're pretty much dead in the water.
Yes, as I said, I'm glad you asked me that question, because it's a question a lot of people are asking. And why? Because a lot of people want to know the answer to it.
I find hypocrisy and the two-faced behaviour of public figures both hard to deal with and extremely funny. In fact, I think the only way to deal with it is to laugh at them.
I was entitled to express my views. I was entitled to be consulted.
Did you threaten to overrule
I
him?
was not entitled to instruct Derek Lewis, and I did not instruct him.
This is how you deal with questions. If you have nothing to say nothing. Better still, have something to say and say it.
Did you threaten to overrule him?
I did not overrule Derek Lewis.
Did you threaten to overrule him?
I took advice on what I could or could not do.
Did you threaten to overrule him, Mr. Howard?
And I acted scrupulously in accordance with that advice.
Pay no attention to the question, just make your own statement.
I'm sorry. It's a quick, straight
you
yes
can
or
put the
no.
question, and I will
Yes or no
give you an
Did
answer.
you threaten to overrule him?
Then if they ask the question again, what you say is, that's not the question. Or, I think the real question is, and then you make another statement of your own.
I note you're not answering the question whether you threatened to overrule him.
The important aspect of this, which it's very clear to bear in mind.
When I was at Cambridge, I joined the Union Society in my first term because I thought I was might be interested in going into politics one day. And all the main debaters there, age 20, were the most pompous, self-satisfied, self-important bunch of clowns that I've ever clapped eyes on, and they were all behaving as if they were on the government front bench, and 20 years later they all were. You know, Michael Howard and John Selwyn Gummer and Kenneth Clark and all these people, they were the people who were the big cheeses at the Cambridge Union Society, and I thought at that point the only thing I could ever contribute to politics is making fun of the politicians.
Please let me finish, because we must be absolutely clear about this, and I want to be quite frank with you. The plain fact of the matter is that at the end of the day it is the right, or nay, the duty of the elected government in the House of Commons to ensure that government policy, the policies on which we were elected and for which we have a mandate, the policies, after all, for which the people voted, are the policies which, finally, when the national cake has been divided up, and may I remind you, we as a nation don't have unlimited wealth, no, we can't pay ourselves more than we've earned, are the policies... I'm sorry, what was the question again?
Like most sequels, yes, Prime Minister could have stretched a point too far. But if anything, it became a lot sharper. In making Jim Hacker Prime Minister, the writers were then able to take a swipe at the whole political process. And to those who say that someone as inept as Hacker couldn't possibly get so high up the ladder, I say, look at Lord Falconer. Falconer was a fundamentally likeable but Burkish minister under Blair, who went on to make a complete dog's turd of the Millennium Dome. So where's he ended up? He's Lord Chancellor, in charge of the entire system of justice. I rest my bloody case.
What would you say to your present master as the next Prime Minister?
At the end of the third series of Yes Minister, the boys, the writers, thought that would be it, because they didn't know where they could take him, and they thought they might be in danger of repeating themselves.
Are you in a hurry?
No, I'm just checking to see it wasn't April the 1st.
The BBC did press us to go on, and we thought, well, if we made him Prime Minister, we'd, gosh, then, you know, we'd have a whole lot of new material to write about, and so we thought, how could we possibly do that?
What do you mean? You mean... don't mean.
I don't think that Jim Hacker would ever have been thought of naturally as a Prime Minister, but funny things happen. And they did.
It might just be possible that an unlikely figure, rather in the way that Alec Douglas Hume was really quite unlikely in 1963, it just might happen that at least we could get away with that, and so that's how we did it.
Yes. Yes. Yes, he's here. I'll tell him. Yes, Prime Minister.
It's great watching the dialogue ping around the three central characters. And again, the writers have set themselves some pretty brave challenges here. There's very little swearing and no knob gags. Instead, language itself becomes a joke. Great verbal contortions and confusions tumble out of everyone's mouths. And the most famous of these are, of course, Sir Humphrey's speeches.
Will you give me a straight answer to a straight question?
Oh, well, Minister, as long as you're not asking me to resort to crude generalizations and vulgar oversimplifications such as a simple yes or no, I shall do my utmost to oblige.
Is that yes?
We love the idea of the sheer coherence and articulacy of Sir Humphrey, the way he comes. You always know the big speech is going to happen. It's one of the things you look forward to in every episode of Yes Ministers. When's he going to do his bit? And can I see if he's actually reading an idiot board? My God, he isn't. He's really learnt it, and it's superb.